Hi guys, welcome back to Bunny Brick Designs. So it's Shibori Day with the Maze Bargain Bead Box Tropical Heat. And so what I was thinking for doing this, I was thinking I want to do something that reminds me of, it's tropical. So I wanted to do something that kind of reminded me of tropical. So I decided I am going to do a necklace, but I wanted to do it kind of like a flower, but not floral like we did in last month's bead box. So I came up with this design and just kind of drew this in. And so I used these wood templates and kind of just drew that there, kind of drew that there, and drew this here. So to me, this kind of shape, the way I want to do this is going to remind me of a bird of paradise. And I'm just going to real quick show you something. There is my little girl. You'll have to excuse the mess in the closet. She likes to make a mess in there, but she's hanging out, waiting for a cookie. Oops, Mom threw it down. It's underneath you, baby. There you go. Anyways, sorry about that. She's been very clingy the last few days. So I pulled out my Shibori and I was looking at this one, and we had used this orange one in the Sunshine and Lollipops. And while that would go with the beads, I didn't want to use it again. So I pulled out my magenta, my hot pink, and yellow and orange. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the yellow side, because I think the yellow side is going to contrast nicely with the beads. And I'm going to put one going this way and one going this way. And so I'm going to be sewing these on. I'll show you the start of it, and then I'll do it off camera. And then once these are on, I'm going to take a nice big wide piece, shorter wide piece, and go over top of everything so that this leaf is, it's going to be over top of everything. So I was thinking I may curve this so that there's not a ton of the Shibori underneath this center one, because I don't want it too puffy. But I thought about curving that and leaving some space for, more beads and doing that, something like that, maybe. Anyways, we're going to get started. So one of the things I did was I went through my embroidery thread and I found this very tropical pink color. It's very neon. I don't know what the color is because they just have numbers on them. I bought a kit. So we're going to sew on the Shibori. And like I said, I'm probably going to omit the actual sewing. I'm going to start it for you. And then I'll do it off camera, and then we'll come back when I've gotten these two sewn on. And then I'll show you how to sew this one over top of everything. And so, this is going to be a layered Shibori, which is going to be something different than what we've done in the past. So that's, it's going to be unique. I am going to grab a needle here. I don't know if I want to use this one. I need to get a fresh needle. So after a while, my needles get really dull, from literally stabbing through fabric. So I have a vial of needles, both long and short. I like the shorter ones for sewing on the fabric portions, just because they're easier to work with when you're trying to I will use both. And I'll apologize for the noise in the background. I've got a bunny that's deciding she's, going to enjoy herself while I'm in her room. she was upset earlier because I had locked her in her room to let one of the other bunnies out to play. And what was kind of funny was the other bunny is usually pretty good with getting back in her room when I rattle the treat bag. She's gotten wise to it. So now she's like, yeah, no, I'm not. All right, I am going to, I think, go down through here. One of the things I want to do is I kind of want to put so that the knot is not right out at the edge. And so I'm just going to make a couple of stitches here just to get my thread situated, and try not to knot up my thread like that. That's the one thing when you're doing 2 strands of thread, if you've got any kinks or anything in it, it is going to knot up, and that just and yeah, so this is the reality of doing anything with I'm not sure what's going on. Did I? Oh, there we go. Well, that's going to be underneath. So it knotted there, and that's fine. There's a knot in it. There we go. And for whatever reason, this came out in the back. So I'm just going to tie a knot here. I think I spliced the thread. So now that I've gotten my thread started, and yes, you will, if you're going to do shibori, you will have knots in your thread. I've actually off camera spent, I don't know, 20-30 minutes trying to get a knot out of things at times, just because I don't want to have to start over, because I was beading a whole bunch of stuff and then I'd have to take out a whole bunch of beads. So yeah, I'll work the knots out. All right, so I'm just going to tack this down again up at the top here, because I want it as close to the top as I can get it. I don't want it right up to the top, but as close as I can. So now, prior to getting on camera, and because I didn't want to have to wait for you, I painted the fabric with, it's supposed to be rose gold, but it's kind of an orangey brown, and that's fine. It's just something to make sure that you don't see white when you're, like, if you had a bead on the fabric and you could see around it, it's more of this color. That way it kind of stands, it doesn't stand out. All right, so I've got this sewn on, and I want to sew, I'm going to sew around, I think I'm going to sew this around here and start out on this edge, so that we have that edge sewn. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that this is folded over and not up like that. So I'm just going to pull my thread through, and to make sure that you've got a fold in your shibori, because as you can see, that's the edge and it's frayed a little bit. So I want to go down through and kind of fold this guy under a little. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to roll it just a little. And so I had it rolled there in my needle, but so to roll it, you're just going to take your needle and go on the edge. And it's not completely rolled yet, but it will be. So again, I'm going to come up through. Oops. And I'm going to go through the yellow into the pink. So I kind of pick up like a stitch. If you can see that, I went through. And that's going to start rolling that edge. And again, it's going to be covered, but I just like to have more of a finished edge, just so that it's not going to fray, because we're just tacking this down. All right, so I am going to go finish this off camera. I'm going to do this other side here off camera, and then I will be back to show you how to put the bigger piece on. So I will be right back. All right, guys, so I sewed on my two Shiboris, and as you can see, they're not exactly the same, and that's fine because flower petals don't always look the same. Now we've got this one, which I did not cut this in half with lengthwise like I normally do, because I do want this one bigger, because I want this to literally engulf this whole shape. But I have these two little ends here that are left over, and I am going to keep those. And as you can see, I just turned them up. And the reason why I want to do that is because it's going to provide a little bit of bulk underneath this ribbon, so that when I'm sewing it, it's going to make this one puff up a little bit. And that's what I want. I want this one to be the biggest portion, and then we're just going to fill in around with beads. So what I'm going to do is I still have my thread attached, and I'm closer to the bottom, but I am going to move up here to the top. And I'm going to move up. I don't want that ribbon all the way up. I want it to be in line with the edges of these two, because it is wider, so I don't want to try to squish it so much that it looks odd. And I'm just trying to go into all of the pleats here as best as I can. Trying to not get, too much of a bulk, but I just wanted to get the pleats. And then I am going to tack down right at the other corner there, so that it's in line there, just like that. So that's perfect. So now I've got to, this is still really loose, as you can see, and it's going to different sides. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to tack the center down. So I'm just going to come up through the center, and I'm going to go down just somewhere, because again, this is going to get covered by beads. I just needed to tack that down just a little more, just because I needed to make sure that my it's not going to pull up when I start doing this. And so I'm going to start on one side, and I am just going to follow that center pattern. So I drew that line. So as you can see, I've got a line that I know kind of curves right here. So I am going to follow that curve with my ribbon. And it is going to go over top of the other, and that's fine. Because, and even though, I know Shibori is expensive, but what I really didn't want to do was have, it cut off and looking like, it was cut off. Because if I do happen to expose any of this overlap at all, I want to make sure it doesn't look, unintentional, or that I cut it and then redid it, or, there's just tiny pieces. Plus, this is going to bulk up this leaf and make it look a little more 3D. Plus, it's going to stitch down these a little better as well. So I'm just stitching this down and continuing to go, and I'm not anywhere near where I need to be. I just realized that last stitch was not where it needed to be, because I needed to be a little wider. to come around, but that's okay. Because again, and see, this is where it gets difficult when you're trying to do layers, because you can't really see where your lines are. Now I could have opted to have stitched, and I'm trying to roll it. So I could have opted to stitch the center one down to there and then stitch it to there and have it open and tucked those under. But, you know, you can do it either way. And again, I'm just trying to get this tucked down. I'm not really worried about how it looks at the moment, because again, we're going to be putting some beads over it, and I wanted this to be super bulky. So now that I'm close to the bottom, I'm going to come up, because I do want this puffed just a little bit, so I need to push it. I need to get it pushed up. So I'm going to go through the bottom, not all the way to the bottom, just to about there. Nope, little higher. There we go. And I'm not going right to the edge. And again, I am going to take and try to get every pleat that I can in this, so that it's nice and tight. And then I am going to tuck that down right there. Now, if you happen to get that where your threads get uneven, just try to figure out which one it is and pull on it. So now I've got my bottom done. And again, I want it to be poofy and bulky. So that is exactly what I was going for, was the bulk. And your ribbon's gonna, you know, S-curve the way it wants to. It's got its own natural curve when you're working with Shibori. I happen to love it, you know, because I like the organic look. So, all right, so I'm going to finish this up. I'm just going to sew this around here and get this sewn up, and then we'll come back and do some beading. So I will be right back. All right, guys, so that didn't take long. I probably could have done it on camera with you, just a few stitches. So again, it's going to look asymmetrical, but it does look like leaves. So yeah, so I'm going to finish off, and as you can see, you're going to have a mess on the back. Again, this is always hidden when you do your gluing onto your ultra suede, or you do whatever you decide to use for your finishing. And so what I'm doing is I just went through the fabric, and I'm going to make a quick knot here on my last stitch. Little simple knot there, not anything too special. And then I'm just going to stick the thread through the fabric again and then cut it off, because what's going to happen is this is going to get glued down. The knots here, it's going to get glued down. It's not coming out because all the knots that are in there are going to hold it down. Now we've got our Shibori base. So now we're going to need to switch to some beading thread. And I think because we've got the darker colors here, I think I'm going to use black or smoke. So I'm going to grab some Fireline Wildfire. So oops, that's the white. Hang on. I need the black. So when you're working with darker beads like this, the black will blend into the background better than the white, because white will tend to stand out against darker colors. So I'm going to use this is Bead Smith fire line. And I'm going to take a nice long piece of thread, and I'm going to use my short beading needle. So I tend to sew with my beading needle too. And I'm going to get this threaded here. And so now I have not decided what I want to do with my design yet. So before we get started with beads, I've got gold, which will definitely go with this. It's not as bright as the gold that came with, but it's close enough that it'll work. I've got these very, very bright, hot pink ones for seed beads. And then I've got these rainbow matte coral, which I absolutely love, and I don't know if I want to do the border with these, or if I want to do something else. And then I thought about maybe bringing in some green bicones to make it look more flowery, but I'm thinking against that. I need to come up with a pattern to do my edging, and I need smaller bicones. I just don't know if I want to do the orange all the way around. That might be a little too much orange. Maybe not if I did orange, pink. And I wonder if I have any hot pink 4mm bicones. Do I? I do not, but I do have these, which will match the pink in that. Or I have tangerine. So I'm trying to find some beads that will go with, unfortunately, hot pink is not one of the things that I tend to have a lot of. So we may just go with the orange and gold, and maybe because I like that, I might do those. And maybe some hot pink. Ooh, there we go. So we might alternate, instead of using these, like all of these orange bicones, we may alternate between the three of these. I think that'll work. I think that'll look nice along with the gold. So we're going to start, and I'm going to do this center one first. And I am going to start at close to the top on this one. So I don't, and I'm right on the edge of my, so I'm going to pull that through because I don't want to be quite on the edge, that close to the edge. So I am just coming up through. So as you can see, and let me get my pen, and I didn't finish my point. My point's kind of right there. And so what I want to do is I don't want to be right up to that point, but I want to be kind of close to where I stopped painting. And I want to come up, and I am going to try and tie a knot in this just so it will stay and not go through the fabric. So I'm going to do one, and because fireline tends not to knot very easy when you're trying to knot like this, I'm just going to do two real quick. And then I left a little bit of a tail, which is fine, because what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to start out with a gold. So I'm going to pick up a gold. I am going to do an orange, and I'm going to pick up another gold, because I want to use those bicones as well. I don't want to use all of them, because I do want to use them in the necklace portion of this also, because this is going to be attached to a necklace. And I'm just going to start doing my border. And so I think we're going to try the pattern of orange, pink, orange, pink, orange, and alternating between the two oranges. So I'm just coming up through, and that seed bead is right there at the edge. And I'm going to go through all three again, just so that the starting beads have a nice start to it. And I'm going to pull that somewhat tight. I'm going to pick up a hot pink here. Now you can also do bigger beads. You could do bigger beads in there. I just don't like doing the bigger beads on the borders. I find that I like 4mm and 8/0 seed beads best. You know, I have done bigger, but again, this is the pattern that I like. So, all right, and I like that so far. And we're going to come up through and go through 3, just so we're making sure we're getting these beads, so that you're going to have at least 2 to 3 passes through most of these beads. All right, I like that. Do I like that? All right, let's do another one and pick up a tangerine. And I may end up adding an additional row, because what I may do is I may do this, and then I may do a border, an alternate on either side of this, of hot pink and gold, or so I am going to go around this shape, and I will meet you back here as soon as I'm done that, and then I'll show you how we're going to fill in the rest of this pattern. And oh my god, I wish you could see this. Sorry, I shook the camera. Velvet literally just climbed into the box of hay. So I'm actually looking at her right now. She's like over that direction, and she's inside the box of hay. Oh, so anyways, I'm going to pause you. I'm going to go finish this border. I will be right back. All right, guys, real quick. I'm just trying to show you her in the hay. Velvet, bunny girl, sweetheart. See, I told you she was in the box. All right, guys, so sorry, I had to show you Velvet because that was just too hilarious not to share with you. So I'm down to the bottom, so now I have to make a choice as to whether I want to go back up in the same order that I started, so have a pink here and go back, or if I want to just continue on in the pattern and start with an orange here. I think for symmetry, I think I'm going to go with the pink. So one of the things I'm going to do is I am going to come up right next to this gold bead, and I'm going to go through the gold bead because I want that gold bead to be the point. Oops. And so I am going to pick up a pink and a gold and start going back up in the other direction. So what that means is, and I'm going to move this camera up just a hair. There we go. Just so I have a little more working space for you guys. And so I'm going to turn this and put the beads in the opposite direction. So that is, it's going to be a little tight for, and it's going to be a little tricky. So you're going to have to try to turn this bead so it's more straight than angled. But we'll get there. It will turn, you know, after this second set of threads, and I'm trying not to snag the felt. So there we go. Now we've got that down. So now we have a point there. And I think I'm going to put, I don't know if I want to put that there. Oops. Or that up there. I do want one of these beads in here. You know, definitely I'm thinking these beads also somewhere in there. And, you know, maybe even some of these flat beads, because I think that would fill in nicely there. But we'll play with it. I just want to make sure I have some of everything that's in here, except for maybe these. I don't think I want the triangles in this piece. That being said, you know, I want it to look very tropical, very warm, remind you of a bird of paradise. Like, I think they're called birds of paradise, the flowers. They're kind of spiky, and maybe not as fat as these, but I didn't want to do it so thin that you had no shibori and just like 2 or 3 beads and that's it. I wanted to make my artistic take on it. So this is my take on the bird of paradise. And Velvet is now calmly laying underneath the crafting table. She has decided she's, you know, done with being rambunctious. And now I know I didn't sew on the shibori on this side very well. It needed to go way over here more. So I may try to force some of the shibori over. Because I can see my line that goes right along here, and I wanted to make sure that I cover my stitches. So I'm gonna have to, I may have to mess with it, or I may have to, like I said, I may have to put a second row of something around on the interior, which I can do. I mean, the biggest thing on shibori is you want to cover your stitches, and you want to cover them with beads. You want to cover your edges. You want to cover them with beads. And you want to do it so that your design looks like it was intentional. You know, a lot of times, because shibori tends to move in weird directions, the fabric itself, you know, you're as much as I intend it to look a certain way, like I've got something in my head, and whether or not it comes out what, you know, as to what's in my head, you know, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Like the last bead box, the floral earrings that I did, they came out like what I was intending, which was I wanted it to look like a bouquet of flowers. And it did. It looked like a bouquet. But, you know, sometimes, you know, you're thinking, oh yeah, this is the way I want it to look. And then you try it and you're like, yeah, that did not come out with what was in my head. But that being said, I still love it. So I did, oh gosh, I did a heart, and I had this idea of this, you know, swirl in the heart, and I'll have to show you the design at some point. But I did this design, and the swirl came out pretty good with the shibori. But then when I went to do the other side of it, you know, what I had in my head wasn't quite what came out, because the beads didn't quite lay the way that I wanted them to. And so I ended up, I mean, I loved it. It's pretty. I have it for sale in my stuff for craft fairs, but it wasn't what I was intending. Now, I've had projects that I've done that was exactly what I was intending. So I just got through, and I'll show it to you when we're done with this. I just finished a beaded bunny cabochon, and it's a bunny with a trumpet, and I wanted to make it look antique. vintage, like, so it looked like it was old. And I posted the picture on Facebook for my friends, and one of my friends was like, "Oh my God, that looks vintage." And I was like, "That's exactly what I was going for." And she was like, "Nailed it." So that was pretty cool. All right, so I am just forcing some of this fabric over while I'm sewing on, and I've got a knot there, which is not a knot, it's just a twist in. There we go. So I took a pretty long piece of thread because I wanted to do as much as I possibly could with this one piece. And we will be going until there's only like inches left because I'm going to have to do a lot of beading on this. So anyways, I am almost done. I'm going to pause you guys again. I'm going to continue on going up around and I will meet you back. Okay, so I finished up that. Now I'm going to start doing the borders around this. Now keep in mind, you're not going to be bordering right up to the shibori this time. We're bordering the pattern because I want this to be the borders. And then we'll fill in around here with some things to hide our stitching. But I'm going to start out, again, I'm always going to start with a gold bead up against this other bead here. So as you can see, instead of having a bright colored bead, I'm going to start there. And I think on these, I am going to just go and follow the pattern, but I may not alter on the points, like in reverse direction like I did on this one. I may just continue on with the pattern all the way around, just because these are side leaves, so that I want them slightly different. So I am going to go ahead and start beading, and I'll do a couple of stitches here with you. And then I'm going to bead these off camera, and we will get back together and finish up. Oops, I got my thumb stuck. We'll finish up the interior with some bigger beads, and then on this one I am going to be stitching in, and I haven't decided whether I want to stitch in the chain or if I want to stitch in a jump ring so that I can do beading and chain, or like, I haven't decided yet. So anyways, I'm going to finish these two sides up and with the border, and I will meet you back. Okay guys, real quick before I end for the night. So this, as you can see, this bead ends, and there's not really a gap there, but there's a slight gap. So I'm going to show you what I did. So I came up through to tack down my stitches like I normally do. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the camera rig. And I'm going to go back through my beads. They're kind of loose right now because I haven't tacked them. I haven't done the double tack. Now they're pretty tight because I've tacked them down. I'm going to pick up one gold seed bead. And so this is where you're looking and you're like, that's not going to fit. But if I take my fabric and I angle it like this and stick my needle down through and pull while it's on the angle, it's going to tack that down where it's slightly underneath the bead, but it's tacked down. So now I can come back up through and tack it down again, and we are nice and tight. So, all right, I'm going to end for the night here. I think this looks gorgeous. I think, you know, it looks like a flower. So we are going to need to do, because I can see, I can still see, and while I have to bend it, I can still see stitches there. and I can definitely see stitches in here, and definitely stitches there, and definitely stitches there. So I think I'm going to take, and I think the bright beads will look good. I don't know if I want to use those because they are hot pink lined. So I may use some of those, or I may decide to go with my matte coral. These I have not opened yet. But these are, you know, pretty cool. They're matte, but, you know, you can mix your matte and and I actually like that because that matches this tone here. I may do just a set of those with some golds in between, or I may do, you know, like, again, I play with it on the needle to see what it looks like. So if I did, you know, something like this, you know, that might look good. You know, I might do that. I don't know if that looks too stripey to me, but I could also do, you know, 3 of those, a gold, 2, 3 of those maybe in there. I don't know. Or if I don't like having straight seed beads, I could always do orange, you know, something like this, where it's all like, you know, bright colors. I mean, that literally matches. I don't know if I want to do that because those are too matchy. We could do pink, something like this maybe. So again, I'm just trying to figure out what I want to do. An orange, a pink, and I don't have to put seed beads in between everything. You know, I could do this, right? Something like this maybe. Let me get one of these on here because again, we're designing right now. And then I could do that with the gold, and you know, that looks pretty cool. So there's not as much gold. Again, I don't know. I may just do a straight line of seed beads of these pinks. You know, just doing a straight line in there. Next to it, that might look cute. There's a lot of things I can do, so I'm gonna think on that, and we'll get back together tomorrow for me, in a few minutes for you, if you're following along, and we'll do some decorating before I do some lining, because I think if I decorate, maybe that will dictate what I use for beads. Anyways, I will be back shortly, and we'll get finished with this. Hey guys, so I'm back. So I finished my border last night and took care of bunnies. And so this afternoon, I started playing with ideas for designing, and I'm not sure about, this diagonal, going through the center. I do know I want something through the center there. I just haven't decided what I want yet. I did put some beads. I have not sewn them down, just to kind of give myself an idea of what I want to do for placement. So we are going to do these points first. And so I am going to take these beads out, and I'm going to set them aside so that I know what areas they're going to be in. So as you can see, I'm setting them off to the side, and that's going to be the bottom. And then this is going to be the top. And then this is going to be, beads to the left, beads to the right. And then these are going to be the in-betweens. And just so I know what area that they came from. And I'm just setting them in a pile here. And that way I kind of know where they're going to be. Now this center one, I'm still not sure of. So I am just going to set these here. I do think I want to use these coral AB beads. So we're going to go ahead and start. Now I've got a little bit of thread left. I want to try to use it all up. And so I'm going to start by putting on this center bead here. And we are probably going to have to add some seed beads around it, and that's fine, just to get it started. So first I think what I'm going to do is, because this one is kind of a square bead, I am going to pick up a gold just to see if when I put it down, because I do want that center to be filled up. But see, now that gold is going to make it too far away from those other beads. So we're going to see if putting that one there will work. I still may need to put another bead in. Now I'm going in on a diagonal here. I don't know if you can see that, so that it's not going to go straight down, because I want this to be nice and tight. And so, you know, you're going to have some thread showing a little bit there. So what I may do is I may come up here, pick up a gold bead, now that it's anchored down, and go through. So now we have that kind of on a diagonal. And then I can pick up another. Well, actually, the next bead that's going to go on is this flat bead. So that is going to go on there. And so that will cover. And I am going to pick up a gold bead just to end this one, because I do want it to look nice. And I'm going to try to get it in between some of those folds, just like that. Now that bead's going to be, it's going to stick up a little bit. Again, we can come up kind of back where we started, if I can get the needle through in the right, there we go, in the right spot. And we're going to anchor that down just a little bit. So I'm going to pull this nice and tight like that. And then I'm just going to stick my needle straight down, just to kind of tack that down. So we've got that. Now I had 2 orange beads on either side, because as you can see, I can still see edging here and I can see edging there. And I decided I wanted to go with the clear orange from my stash instead of the orange that's here, so that I'm not having 2 of these orange beads side by side. And I think I want to pick up one of these coral beads also, just to kind of start getting some of these beads added in. And we're going to tuck that down. And so what I'm doing is I'm just pushing the needle and trying to get it as close to the edge as I possibly can. And again, I'm going to go back up through and I'm going to go through this, because I don't want that bead laying flat. I want it more upright like that. And then I am going to go back down through my fabric, and I'm going to do that on the other side. So now that anchors, and it will stick up a little, it will stick down a little bit like that. You can add some glue if it bugs you. It probably will bug me. I will probably do something with that, because I don't like seeing stitches. And I'm going to go back up through on this side, pick up my orange bead, and I don't know, there's my other orange bead. And another one of these coral beads. And again, I can do some additional bead work around here. I'm probably going to have to anyways. So that one might get evened out. And then I am going to just come down and go through the fabric and pull that nice and tight. And I'm going to come back up through and go back through that again. And go down right next to where I came up. Now, I'm also seeing that there's a little space here. So I am going to pick up, I'm going to come up through right next to the edge of the bead. I'm going to pick up one of these little coral ones. And I'm just going to go back down through. And then when I pull it tight, it should sit in there quite nicely like that. And then we're going to have to do one on this side as well so that we're keeping even. And this one might be a little bit tighter. But it's in. All right. Now see, this is going to bug me. We'll do something with that because those are laying flat. I may go up and do, so one of the things you can do is if you don't like the way they're laying flat, you can come up through the bead. If I can get my needle up through. Little beading trick. Come up through that bead, because that bead's laying flat, and that's fine. I can pick up another coral, or even, let's do a gold, because we don't have a lot of gold in here. So I'm going to pick up a gold, and then I'm just going to go right back through that bead. And if I don't knot myself, and so this bead will end up, if you do it right, on its side so that it looks like it's just sticking up over that coral bead. And we're going to do the same on the other side. And just to, because I don't like seeing, I really don't like seeing any kind of thread when I'm doing shibori. And there we go. Perfect. So now we can see the coral bead, but it's kind of hidden below the gold, and that's fine. So I do have a little bit of thread left. I don't have a whole lot, so it's going to start to get tight. I think I'm going to fasten off and get a new piece of thread here, just because I don't like working with such short pieces of thread. And I know it's like a foot long, but when I start pulling tight, it starts sliding off the needle. I use those short 1 foot pieces to do little tack downs, or to do, you know, if I only need 1 or 2 beads to fill in. Or if I'm not doing anything where I need to pull super tight. All right, so to start this one off, seeing that we were up here, I think I want to do this bottom part next. So I am going to stick my thread underneath this pink thread, and I'm just going to tie a knot just so I have it knotted. And that's how easy it is to tie on. I'm going to come up through here as close as I can to my edge. And pull my needle through. And we were going to start out with, I do believe, this pink bead and then that, to mirror that one. And so we're going to go through the pink. And I'm going to tuck this pink down. And so if you see me wiggling the needle like that, it's because I've hit a particularly stiff spot that doesn't want to come up. And so I'm just wiggling the thread through, or the needle through, because it will eventually poke through. All right. And then we are going to add on this. And I think I'm going to tuck this one down. I don't know if I want to do gold on this one. So I'm going to tuck this down right there. And come back up through and go through there one more time. And can see thread there. Not sure I'm liking that, but that's fine. I'm going to pick up a gold. Do I want to pick up a gold? I think instead of a gold, because this being the bottom, I think I'm going to add in an additional orange crystal instead of the orange. Or do we want a bicone? Crystal or bicone? Crystal. When I'm doing shibori, I tend to go more for the crystals. I think the solid crystals are AB finish, because I think the solid beads, like these oranges, although they've got a nice shine to them, tend to, I don't know, look a little less fancy. So I've got a thread that I can see there. We will address that. I'm going to go get up and add my crystal here. And I know we're going to have two oranges side by side. That's fine. Again, I just want to put this in and get this in between. There. And I'm going to come up through here. And when you're only doing one, it's fine to just stitch the one down and not go back through it. Like, you can go back through it if you want to secure it. Extra velvet. She's being naughty and chewing on carpet at the moment. She's mad because I picked her up and was taking care of her. She was scratching at her ears, so she got medication put in her ears that she did not like earlier. So she's mad. All right, so there we go. So that's in. Now I do have this one spot that I'm not liking. I want to address that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up through right next to that spot. And I can do one of two things. I can tack this down. So I'm going to show you the two things. So I can tack it down like this, which is just taking your thread and pulling it down. And that may line everything up the way you want. If that doesn't work, Velvet, bunny girl, come here. If that doesn't work, you can add seed beads. So that's what we're going to do here, is just add some, I'm going to add some of these coral seed beads, because I do want to bring these in. And I'm going to pick up, I don't know, 3. Let's see if 3 will work. So I just want to build a little bridge. And I think we'll need maybe 5 of those. And I'm going to come back right down alongside. Those 5 should be plenty. And it's going to form this little bridge. We've done this before on other things. Now you can pull it nice and tight and get those in there like that. and just kind of tuck them down. And if you want to, you can go back through a second time. I'm just adjusting my beads here so that they stand up, but they're not so tall that they're getting in the way. Now that works. Now that covers everything there. Now I'm going to do my points, and I know, you know, that's taking a lot of thread across the back, you know, which is fine. That's going to glue down. And then we are going to do small pink and a bigger pink here in this corner, because the small pink is going to fill in that little tiny gap. And then that big pink is just going to continue on to give me my pattern with this. And so I'm going to go back down through. And so we have that. I'm going to stitch both of these down a second time just to make sure they're nice and tight, and I'm not seeing any threads. What I may end up doing is anchoring that thread with a couching stitch, and I've got to twist it, and there we go. Straight down. And so when I said anchor with a couching stitch, just because you can see the thread there, I'm literally just going to go up right between the two and then just pull this straight back through the same, close to the same spot, and then just pull this over that thread. So it's literally going over the thread and pulling that down tight. Well, you'll still see, you might still see the thread a little bit. You're not going to see it as much. So I like that. Now I'm going to, rather than go directly across to this other corner, because then I'm going to have thread covering this. So if I were to go straight across over there, I'm going to have thread covering where I'm going to cut. So I'm going to come down here and do this corner, which we said in that corner we were going to put in. And so these beads are going to be beaded on one at a time. I'm going to do the pink directly in the corner. And so we're going to go as close to the corner as possible and then just stitch down. And again, I'm just going to do one bead and get that anchored. I'm going to come right up next to that bead because we are just filling in around the edge. I'm going to do my solid orange bicone, and we're going to go down in this direction toward that. And so this is filling in our spots here that did not have the shibori. And it's just covering, it's covering some of our stitches. And then this corner here is going to get the orange crystal. And that's going to go down. And that fills in there. I'm going to come over to this corner and we are going to do the same thing. We're going to pick up, so see, it's keeping it pretty much off of where I'm going to cut here so that I don't have threads that are going to get snipped in the process of, and I know I need another one of those beads because this bead has a thread in it that looks like it got stuck in there. So we're going to pick up another one of those. And so while this is going to address most of our stitches that we need to cover, as you can see, there's going to still be some that I'm going to have to work with. And I will show you how we do that. I think I'm going to use the seed beads for it. And we're going to get this other crystal in the corner. So I'm doing my corners, just getting them tacked in. And I'm doing the upper corners first. And I know I haven't done anything in the corners down here. We will address those. I just wanted to get the majority of the beads in and tacked in just to see what I really needed left for beads. I do see some threads here. I see a couple of threads here. And then I know that there's some threads right there and in here. So we may just do seed beads to fill in there. This here looks pretty good. I got all the stitching there. So I think we're good in the center. It's just these outside edges. So once we get our last corner here on, and I'm going to skip this bottom part for the minute because while I've been working here, I started contemplating new ideas. That happens a lot. I tend to be more organic. I let the design tell me what it wants to do rather than me tell it. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, or if it's just, what I do, but one of these days I might actually get around to making some patterns. Because I think if I could do some patterns like this, maybe do up some kits or something for people that could, kits to follow along with. Because I think that would be fun if, when I'm not doing the bargain bead boxes, when I'm doing things out of my own stash. I don't know if you guys would be interested in following along with kits, but thought it might be fun. Or any classes that I teach locally would be fun if I could, have people, instead of doing their own thing. All right, so that looks really cool. I do like that. Now I am going to, I think I am going to start here just because I can see some, and I'm going to come up through this orange bead here. And I am going to pick up, I think 3. I'm just going to try 3. And I'm starting with 3. I know normally I do 2, but I'm going to do 3 because I just want to see if 3 will be enough to cover. I think 3 will be enough to cover. So then I'm going to come back up through, go through the 2, and then go back down through because that will cover my stitches there. So then I don't have to do a ton going all the way up. We're going to do the same thing on this side because, again, when we're beading, if you're making something symmetrical, you need to mirror. And so 3 of these pink. And I do like this contrast of the the matte AB versus the crystals. I think it makes those seed beads kind of pop. All right, and so there we go. And we'll go back through. All right. And so there we go. So that's taken care of. Now I'm going to do this bottom corner. And I know I'm going to have to go, so if you look at this, I can see stitching all the way up to this orange bicone. So I know I'm going to have to do beads all the way up there. So that means I'm going to have to do beads all the way up here, even though I can't see the thread past this gold bead. So I'm going to start out here, and I know we had picked up a pink crystal and an orange, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pink crystal. I'm going to do one of these peach, or not peach, but coral beads. And I'm going to go down. And then I'm going to pick up, I think I'm going to come up through here just because I see a spot that needs a small seed bead. I'm going to pick up a coral and go back through. So don't be afraid, like if you start something and you see that you have a hole, add a seed bead like that to add in later. And then I'm going to pick up the orange and I'm going to do a coral. And I'm going to tuck that down right there. And I'm going to come back up through. Now this is where I'm going to start just my seed beads. And I'm going to pick up 2 more of the peach. Or I call them peach. They're not peach, they're coral. And I'm going to tack down right next to that pink bead. And come back up through. Pull nice and tight. And then I'm going to pick up 2 more corals. And I'm going to go back down through. Now I'm going to do something a little bit fun on this. If I don't stab myself with needles first. So I'm going to go back up through and I'm going to go through 3 of the seed beads. And then I want to make a little end. So I'm going to do something. Then this is something that I want to do maybe coming out of here. I don't know. I don't want to do too many beads. I'm going to pick up a gold seed bead, but now I'm going to go back through those beads and I'm going to go through a bunch of them. And I'm just going to make a little, kind of like a little picot at the top if I can get it to turn the way I want it. Now, there we go. Now I'm going to go back through and then that way it's just a little picot at the top. And it's going to keep those beads nice and in line. So now I'm going to finish up the other side and I will meet you back here when I'm ready to do something in the center, and I do want these to move over. So I will be right back. All right, guys, so I finished up stitching on the last of those beads. Now I need to decide what I want to do here in the center. And I don't know if I want to put something that big in there. I do know I need something to make sure that we can use the beads from the kit to do the necklace. I'm thinking that is a little bit too big. I don't know if I want that. So we're going to have to decide. I'm going to have to decide. I'm thinking maybe one of the crackle beads, which will tie into the bigger beads because we can add bigger beads on the corner. And I'm debating if I want to go straight up and down or if I want to try to get these, you know, pushed over a little bit, tucked in, or if I just want to do a single bead there, or I don't know. See, that's big. I don't know if I like that. So, I mean, again, I'm just trying to think of what I can do here. And, you know, I mean, we don't have to. I could, and actually, I could come up and do just some small beads here. So I could take, for example, 2 of the watermelon, a gold, and do a, maybe one of these orange beads. Let's see what this looks like. And then a gold, and then 2 watermelon. Or I keep saying, like, I don't know why, they just make me think of watermelon. Coral. And just do, I kind of want to do an S shape and follow the curve. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all of those beads at once because I am going to have to go back. But I do like that design. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, actually, before I do that, I think I'm going to lower this just a hair. So that means I'm going to have to de-thread my needle and pull this through because I want to go a little bit lower. And so that is going to be this thread. All right, so trying to thread my needle. Sorry, I need to be off camera for this. So I have a magnifying glass on one of my lights, actually on 2 of my lights. I think I'm going to come up here. So what I'm doing is I'm coming down a little ways because I want to follow this curve of the Shibori silk. So I'm going to do 3 beads. I'm going to tack them down, going in this direction. I'm going to come up between the 2nd and 3rd. I'm going to pick up my big brown one here if I can get it. And then the gold one. And I'm going to tuck that, again, following the curve, because now that we've got that in place, when I come back up through here and go through these again, I'm going to curve it in the other direction with the last 2 seed beads. Oops, sorry about that, guys. And so when I say curve it, now I'm going to, instead of going this way, I'm actually coming back, heading toward the other direction, following that Shibori silk. And I like that. So that gives me my focal in the center, my 2 on the sides. And I think that's good. I am going to come back up through just to stitch those last 2 beads down, or last 3. And give it a nice You know, I could put more. And so I'm going to tell you what I was thinking, that I changed my mind on while I was working on putting these on. I was thinking about taking these with this gold and running them up in between the ribs, but the ribs aren't the same on both sides, so it wouldn't look even. So I opted not to do that. Excuse me. So I like this. I think this looks good. My center leaf is more prominent. I think the center leaf looks much better now that we've gotten that centerpiece. Could I do something here? Yes, but I wanted these leaves to be different. Now, the only thing I'm thinking about now is on either side of these items here, I'm not sure if, I think it needs something. So I am going to just add in, I think I'm going to do 2 corals and a gold, just to kind of give it just something to fill in on both sides. And then we'll finish off, because I think that will look, I think that will do it, and it doesn't have to be super tight, because we're not really hiding anything at this point. I just wanted something on either side of those big beads. Now, the only problem I'm going to have here in doing that is I can't go directly across, because again, I run the risk of going across somewhere where I'm going to cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run my needle down through the fabric, not all the way through that it's going to pull the shibori, but just kind of through the first layer of felt like that, which does 2 things. It also secures this thread, but it gets me over to the other side where I can come up here now. And, you know, and I could have done that before, but, you know, instead of going here, but I had to do beads anyway. So again, 2 beads and a gold. Hi, Bunny. Sorry, she wants cookies. Hi. Sometimes I really wish I had like a cam underneath my workbench just so you guys could see her. And that came up in the wrong spot. I'm not liking where that came up. So I'm just popping off my beads. I'm going to de-thread and pull that out. Don't be afraid to move your thread if you happen to come up where you don't like where you came up. I've done that several times where, you know, if I try to continue on, it doesn't look right. I need to come up right in between. So right there. And I was over here earlier, so I didn't want it to look uneven. So I'm going to pick up my 2 beads and my gold. So now we're going to do something really unique on finishing this. We are going to sew on our jump rings to the points so that I can add beads, chain, whatever I decide for the necklace portion. I'm thinking I want to do some beads, but I may also want to do some chain too. I haven't, you know, or maybe do beads, chain, but we need to get this portion finished first. And then, so I think we'll do, I'm probably going to end up having to do this in two videos, because otherwise it's going to get too long. All right, so I am going to kind of just tuck my thread up underneath here for now, just so it's out of the way. I may make a knot here just to secure this while we're doing this next step, because this next step is going to be tricky because I need to trim, and then we are going to, I'm not going to cut this because we're going to sew on around around this point. We're going to sew on the oh God, I can't think. We're going to sew on the jump ring. So I'm going to start by cutting close, but not super close to my design here, just so I can get a basic outline, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to cut any of the threads on the back. And so what I'm going to do is, while I'm edging this piece here, I am going to make sure that I am not cutting any of the threads. So I'm just going to go gently around, and you notice that even though this is a point, it's more rounded here, and that's kind of what I was going for, because flowers don't have serious point. I mean, they do, but they don't. I know the oh, what do you call it there? What we're going for the tropical flower, the bird of paradise, does have points on its leaves. I didn't want it to do it too sharp because, again, I'm doing an abstract version of the bird of paradise. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to trim the edges, and I can see a thread right there that I didn't want to cut. So I'm just trying to cut this little piece off. There we go. And there's one there on the point. And again, just trying to avoid getting stitches. Okay. And that's why I like these rounded scissors, because you can get into corners a lot easier with them. Okay, that's good. So now I still have some on this side here, but I've got that one stitch that I really can't trim out. So what we are going to do with that is I am going to find and I don't have hot pink, but I do have orange. So I am just going to Sharpie anything that I see that's white. I can cut that corner out. So that's the thing. If you see something that you know you can trim out, by all means trim it out. If there's something that there's stitches that are going to get in the way of the trim out, just do the Sharpie trick, because then, you know, doing the Sharpie's going to absorb in. And I'm just setting it on the edge. and in spots where I know it's going to be seen. And I'm just letting it absorb in. That corner can be trimmed a little bit. All right. And we'll Sharpie those. And see, like, you've got the points here that I can see a lot of felt, but I have room to trim there. So I'm going to trim that. I've got space there. I can trim some of that out. And again, this is where being very careful about how much you trim out is critical, because if you snip a thread, you are going to end up having to, one of two things, either redo everything or try to find a way to restitch those beads. And believe me, I've done it. It's not fun. Especially when you've gotten to this point where you're like, yes, I'm done. And then you end up having to, you know, redo everything. And sometimes when you go to try to redo it once you've cut, things don't go back together the same way. And then you've ruined the piece. And believe me, I have like several pieces that ended up going in the oopsie, I call them my oopsie pile. The I need to rip it out to reclaim the beads. But the Shibori's lost, and the Shibori is expensive. So if you are working with it, I don't know if you've seen it. If you're buying it online, like on Etsy or somewhere, it can get quite expensive. So a piece that was maybe that long, 8 inches long, is like $10. And really, it's not that wide. So, you know, basically, this thing that was about this long cost me $10 plus shipping. So, all right. So now that we've gotten our edges, and I don't see any real white coming through the front, what we need to do is we're going to need to get some jump rings. And I am going to find my gold that will match that. And so I'm going to take a couple of jump rings. If I can get the package open. And so there's one. There's two. Oop. I don't need three. So what we're going to do is we are going to hold the jump ring on the point, and we're just going to sew it on so it is sewn in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get myself up to that point just by kind of going up through the fabric and underneath some threads to get me close to the point. And now, because we're sewing it on, and we're going to be sewing it on around the beads, I'm going to come up through and pull my needle through and put my needle back down through, and I'm going to pick up my jump ring, and I'm going to sew, basically I'm going to go, whoops, and I just unthreaded my needle. And I'm going to apologize for the noise. Velvet's deciding to play with one of her cardboard toys. All right. So now we're going to pick up the jump ring. I'm going to go back through the fabric. And I'm going to come back down through. And so that's just tacked down. I'm going to do that one more time and come back down through. And I'm going to do it one more. So I'm going to have at least 3 stitches on it. Oops. Yeah. Okay, so I have 3 stitches. And it's going to get glued down, but it's also going to get stitched down. Now, you have to determine whether or not you're going to try to open up these jump rings. So if you're going to want to open the jump ring to add your chain, so if I was going to put chain on it, I'd want to be able to open up the jump ring. I'm going to leave the jump ring opening out at this point, just because I may want to open it up and add chain, or, you know, if I'm adding a crimp bead or something like that, and I'm doing that, I may want to just use, you know, the jump ring. So I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to go back across to the other side. And, you know, keep in mind, oops, and that's the other thing. Make sure you don't do that, because I just tied a knot, and I have a big, I knew I had something. There we go. Good thing I can tighten up knots, because my knots are not super tight. All right, so there we go. So that's there. Make sure you don't do that where you've got thread coming across the other side. I've done that several times where I've had to rip apart a piece and cut thread and tie knots. And all right, so we're close to the other side. That did not go all the way through. Good. And I'm going to come back up through close to where I want to go through. And I don't have a whole lot of thread left, so this is what I mean when I say I don't normally use a ton of thread or smaller threads. But for things like this, if I'm, you know, just sewing on a jump ring, this is fine for doing smaller pieces like this. And I'm actually just going to pick up the jump ring. It's easier. Instead of trying to hold it on, go back through. Once I've gotten it where I want it, I'm just going to go back through. That's 2 times. And there's 3. And again, we've got, that one's not real secure. So I am going to kind of push this down just a little bit. I'm going to go through and I'm going to try to get it a little more secure, because I think that's a softer spot on the felt. So I'm going to come down a little bit lower and go through it there. There we go. And I think one more time through here. And back through. Now it's gonna stick up for a little bit. That's fine. I see a thread there that's gonna annoy me, and I don't know if I can. So if you have a thread like this that's sticking out and it's just a tail, I'm just gonna trim that, because that's just a tail, and that way I'm not messing with it. All right, so now I'm going to tie my knot. And again, I don't have to tie a super, tight knot because this is all going to get glued in. And I'm just going to trim off. Now I've got a mess back here, and that's fine. Nobody's going to see that. So now that we've gotten our bead or our jump rings on, now I can attach this to my felt or my ultra suede. And I'm just trying to pick out which side I like better. I think this side is softer. This is going to be my outside. So again, we're going to lay it down, and I'm just going to set all of this stuff out of the way. And I am going to glue this down, and we're going to do a fancier border on this. I think I want to do on this one, I want to do a picot border, and we haven't done that together yet. So we're going to do that. I am going to make sure this is all glued down. One of the things I'm going to do, I think, just to kind of help this along, just because those jump rings there are in my way, I am going to try and, well, now that I've got it there, that's perfect. We can glue that down right there. So I'm just going to make a mark so I know where to set it. Again, putting in the jump rings can be a pain. So I'm also going to make sure I get some glue right up on those jump rings and on those threads. And then I am going to be adding glue. And this is why I say it doesn't really matter if it's a mess, because you can, any ends that you have, and I'm almost out of this tube of E6000. Now that I'm working with more Shibori, I've been going through this more. I may end up getting some bigger tubes, but my problem is the bigger tubes I kept wasting a lot of glue because the tubes would dry out. So I'm going to set that there. So that should get me perfectly covered all the way over on everything. And now I'm going to set this down, and I'm going to let this dry for at least an hour, if not longer. And I can see some white. So what I'm going to do is, well, it's still not completely dry. I'm just going to color in, trying to avoid my beads. And I'm going to let this dry. I am going to cut this as close as I can, just because we don't need all of that hanging out. And when we get done with putting on the border for this, which is going to be in the next video, I will show you how we're going to do the necklace. And I'm debating whether I want to do chain, because I don't know if the chain is, I may do some chain, but I don't know if I want to do all chain. So I may do some beads, some chain, some beads, some chain. I think that would look cool with this. Or I may just do all beads like I did in the other necklaces. So coming up in part 2, one of the things I am going to do, and I know if you have been watching my channel, in one of the other boxes that I did some Shibori earrings, and I made a necklace, and I actually made a second pair of earrings that I wanted to show you. And then I also made what I call a vintage cabochon pendant. And I can do a tutorial on that one as well to show you how I made that. It was really fun doing it. So That's coming up in the next video in part 2 of this, because we will have done I will have, by the time we get to the next video, I will have cut this out. I'll show you what I did. I'm not going to do it on camera, just because you've seen me cut things close to the edge. I like to have things completely dry for glue, only because if I'm cutting and it starts to peel like that, I don't want the glue to come out or for it to start drying while I'm cutting. And actually that needs more glue back there. So again, try to get your glue pretty well done and dried before you start doing your trimming and your borders. It makes life easier for you. But anyways, I'm going to end this one for now. It's probably super long. And then in part 2, we're going to finish this off, make the necklace that's going to attach to this. And then I will show you some of the other pieces that I've done recently. And yeah, so I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. And this one's going to be called the... oh God, I can't think of the plant name again. Bird of Paradise. So this is the Birds of Paradise Shibori. That's what it's going to be called. So anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.